welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a very exciting review of affordable brush markers. These are the Studio 71 48 marker set, and they are brush markers. They are alcohol based, as you can see. I'm really excited to try them out. As many of you might know, I currently only use Touch 5 markers which have a bullet nib, so these are the first brush markers that I actually own. This was actually recommended to me by a subscriber, Sheepy Draws. I know that Bianyo do their own brush marker, which is quite affordable. However, I'm aware that they only do it in a very large pack, and I just wasn't ready to commit to so many markers. And I think this was about $47. So for all my UK viewers out there, it's about £37. Now it is a USA only product. If you want to get it in the UK or in another country, you do have to pay quite a bit on Amazon, but I managed to get it shipped to England. So the actual marker itself is a triangular barrel. It has a chisel tip on one end and a brush tip at the other. The really good thing about the triangular barrel is that obviously it won't roll off the table. The caps aren't too hard to pull off. Sometimes they're a bit tricky, but I think that's because you're meant to twist them, and I don't really twist them. I assume I'll only use the chisel tip for large areas. The actual brush nib themselves, it's not too hard and it's not too soft. It doesn't really bend, which I think is good, because if it doesn't bend, it gives you more control. In regards to the selection of colors, I think that there is a plentiful amount of colors for a beginner, especially if you've never even tried markers before, let alone brush tips. It has a lot of blue and greens, I feel, but there's a decent amount of browns and skin tones, and greys. It's not overloaded with greys, I hate that. There is some kind of smell to the marker. That's to be expected because they're alcohol based, so it does have a strong alcohol smell, but to be honest, that doesn't really bother me. It seems like a pretty basic marker, to be honest. The only problem is you can't refill these. That might be an issue for some people, but for me, I'm not like a huge marker enthusiast. I'm still starting my journey with them. So for me, it's not too much of a big deal. So here are the swatches. There are 48 colors, and I personally think that you do get quite a decent selection of every single color. They go on really nicely. The bottom swatch is just the chisel tip, and then the top swatch is the brush marker, and I've actually gone over it a couple of times on the left side so you can see how the color darkens. I'm already really pleased with the color selection and the actual way the ink goes on. There is a little bit of I don't know, sort of white dots, but I think you get that with Copic markers as well. They're really, really vivid. I am using Bristol board, so of course the choice of paper that you use does affect the vividness and the brightness of the colors. I think this is a really good starter pack if you want to invest in some brush markers and you're not quite sure which brand you want to go for. This kind of has everything you want to begin with, so I'm quite pleased with this. Okay, so I've just done one layer. I'm going to go over with the same color. I've never used brush markers before, so do excuse my inexperience. I'm going to go in with a darker green, go back with the base color. There is a little bit of patchiness. I mean, you can kind of see where I've attempted to blend it. That might be these two colors. I'll try again with another two colors, just because I want to give it a fair shot. Now I'm hoping that this one's quite closer in shade to the first color, so they do dry quite quickly, but I think that's to be expected with most alcohol-based markers. Yeah, that's a lot better. I think the jump in shade was just too much in the first one. This looks a lot smoother. Yeah, so the colors that I've used for the bottom one are very similar in tone. They are these two here. So it's quite nice. I think it looks more painterly than the other markers I've had, but I'm really excited to try them. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, so I'm going to be colouring in a fan art of the Legend of Zelda series. I know it's not really obvious from my channel, but I am a massive fan. I've been a fan since I was a child, but I thought, you know, I want to sort of honour my first brush marker drawing by doing a fan art of Link and Zelda. Within my order, I also bought a Copic multi-liner in grey, and I also bought the Sakura Micron because, the Sakura Jelly Roll Pen. I know everyone really loves this. I'm hoping it sort of lives up to its name, but I'm going to ink this picture and get back to you. So I've used the Copic multi-liner. I finished inking the picture. I think maybe the grey's a little bit too light, but we'll see at the end. I'm going to start colouring in the skin. What I really like about these markers is that it gives you a case, a plastic box to store them in, and that makes storing them a lot easier, because with markers you should really store them horizontally and it doesn't take up too much space. And yeah, I'm quite like that, because with the previous markers I just had a bag and it was really big because I had a lot of markers. That's another thing, right? I feel like when you have too many markers, when you have too many color choices, it makes life a lot more difficult, but I think 50 is a really good amount. So you're not limited by your color choice, but you aren't overwhelmed with the number of colors that you can choose. Okay, I'm gonna go in with a shade color now. I don't really know how to, I'm assuming the way to blend with brush tips is the exact same way to blend with bullet nibs. But if anybody knows like the proper way, let me know. Okay, so I'm just doing Zelda's face now. I think possibly the biggest pro that the brush markers have over bullet nibs is that you can get into really small areas like hair tips and you can have a lot of detail, whereas with bullet nibs, if you tend to draw smaller pictures, it's a little bit harder to do that and can sometimes end up looking a little bit messy. And maybe it's because I'm colouring such a small area, but I really don't feel like this ink is streaky. You can't tell where I've laid down the colour, so I'm really pleased about that actually. I'm quite surprised. And I don't want to sound biased with these markers because they're my first brush tip experience, but honestly it's a real step up from bullet nibs, for me personally anyways. Okay, so that's the hair done. I've just used 2 markers and I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. The blending is really superb and the ink is really smooth and I'm really impressed. It's been really fun colouring the hair, and normally it's such a chore for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour Zelda's hair and then kind of like fast forward through most of this because the process is kind of the same. So the problem with Zelda's hair is that if you look at the swatches, there's really not a big selection of yellows. I have a really bright one and a slightly darker subdued one. And it's really hard to get a light blonde hair color if you want it to be saturated. So I'm gonna have to mix 3 colors together. Hopefully it turns out okay though. Let me just try. One thing I did notice is that with these markers, they have a tendency to feather out. I'm not sure if that's because of the paper that I'm using or if that's just a feature of the markers themselves. Some colors do it more so than others, but it is something to be aware of. Okay, I've just finished Zelda's hair. I'm actually pretty pleased with the way it's turned out. It could be a bit deeper in terms of the shadows, but I mean, I only have a limited number of markers, just because Link's hair is really deep, it's really defined, and I didn't want it to look odd. But anyway, I'm gonna do his shirt. Yeah, I mean, I really like brush markers. I think I'm converted. I don't even want to use the Touch 5 markers anymore because it's just so fun to use these. Well, you can really tell the difference between how soft this brush tip is compared to when you use the chisel tip, which is a lot harder. I mean, even though I didn't color fast enough, it's not that patchy. You can't really see the lines. Or someone's gonna comment and say, yes, you can, but I don't think you can. I definitely do see a difference in the quality of ink of the Studio 71 markers versus the Touch 5. I feel like the Studio 71 markers, the ink is less prone to patchiness and being streaky. The only time I ever did see it sort of exhibiting patchiness is on Link's top. At some point, I think I must have applied too much blue and I started to see this white spot effect. But other than that, I didn't really see any other negative effects when it came to the ink. Oh, but I did notice that when I accidentally got some ink on my fingers, the ink was kind of sticky. I know that's not really relevant, but it's just something odd that I noticed. It does dry rather quickly compared to Touch 5, but I think that's something you just have to work around when it comes to different marker brands. Because the marker set didn't include a warm brown, I couldn't really get Link's hair the right color. So instead of looking like he came from Breath of the Wild, he sort of looks a bit Twilight Princessy. So I'm a bit disappointed about that. But overall, I think that the markers provided allows you to make a decent picture. You might find yourself struggling a little bit if you're picky. I mean, I am, and I mixed two colors to get that perfect gray shade for their clothing. But, you know, for the non-fussy person, I don't think you're going to have a problem. And if there is a color that you don't have, you can always order the single markers themselves. I didn't because I just wanted to review the set that I purchased. Because I haven't used any other brush marker, I can't really compare it to Copic or Prismacolor or Winsor & Newton, but as my first time using brush markers, I will say that it was a fantastic first impression. I really enjoyed these markers, and I know I've said it a gazillion times, but honestly, I was really impressed and surprised at how good these markers were. One thing that I can't comment on right now is the durability of the brush tips. It could very well happen that in the future, with further use, the brush tip may fray, but of course I will need to use the brush markers a couple more times to see if that happens. But so far, I think these are honestly fab, and if you are looking for a affordable brush tip starter set, I really, really recommend these. Okay, so I've added the colouring pencil, I've done the background, I've added a little bit of a glow around the characters, and I'm really pleased at how it's turned out. Yeah, it was really fun. I'm just gonna add the highlight in. I'm using a new white pen, so hopefully this shouldn't be too streaky. This is the final product. I had so much fun doing this. This is the first time that I've done Zelda fan art traditionally in a really, really long time, and I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. The brush markers are an absolute joy to use. They make life a lot easier. You can get into the nooks and crannies, and they flow. The ink flows quite well. I think that the 48 pack is a very decent selection of colors. There are a few, you know, one or two colors that are missing, but overall it's very good. And if you don't have the color you need, you can always add a bit of coloring pencil or mix a few colors together. I'm really happy I purchased this. I'm not sponsored, by the way, but I really, really enjoyed the product. I'm definitely going to be using it again in the future. Let me know in the comments what you think. Which character do you like better? And let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Thanks for watching my video. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.